Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. We have an update in the Bachelor Clayton Echard v. Laura Owens paternity scandal. As you know, the evidentiary hearing from June 10th has led to Laura Owens owing Clayton $150,000, more or less, for court fees. She also tried to sue him to drop his paternity case, but that sort of never really panned out. Well, now we're just getting a lot of PR. That's where we're at. A lot of PR from her. And by PR, I mean blogs written on Medium. The latest one saying she's got autism. I was just diagnosed with autism, and it explains everything. I'll tell you what, let's power through the blog, and then we're going to speak to one of our audience members who is autistic, and we're going to get their stance and opinion on what the heck is going down here. It's called a 15-minute read. Let's try to do it in 12. Growing up, I was the shy one in a family of big personalities. Both of my parents were talk show hosts, able to command every room they walked into. And my sister was the life of every party, always surrounded by people who adore her. And me, I stayed on the sidelines, painfully shy, terrified to speak up, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. I wanted so badly to feel comfortable in my own skin, to move through life with the ease and confidence they seemed to have. I tried. God, did I try. I devoured every self-help book I could find, convinced that if I worked hard enough, I could fix the part of me that couldn't come out of my shell. So far, I've got empathy for her. I do. I believe her in that, you know, everything is, she's always online dating, everything's online. And I feel like, you know, she just, you know, she needs one of those, like I said before, she just needs to go get a job at Trader Joe's. I wanted so badly to be different. I spent my entire life trying to change. I forced myself into uncomfortable situations, hoping to become the person everyone expected me to be. I read she read every self-help book she could find, went to daily workout classes, started a podcast, even gave a TEDx talk, thinking that maybe, just maybe, I could mold myself into someone confident, someone outgoing, someone who felt at home in her own skin. But no matter how hard I tried, I always felt like I was missing the rule book to life that everyone else had been given. Did you try reading a self-help book? Okay, she did that. She tried that. I love self-help books, by the way. The truth is, I missed out on so much because of it. I canceled dinners with friends because the thought of social interaction, even though I desperately wanted to see them, drained me before I even left the house. By the way, she says she canceled dinner with friends. I object. We have yet to hear from one friend. In fact, we've only heard from people who tried to be her friend, but were driven away by, you know, similar circumstances. We can't really get into it. But trust me, those people are out there. But no one that's actually her friend has spoken to anybody. Friends saw me as unreliable and relationships ended. I even missed my sister's bachelorette party, despite being her maid of honor, because the idea of being on for an entire weekend, even though I would have been surrounded by people I loved, left me exhausted before it even started. And I'm sure the bachelorette party's like, whew. Next thing you know, there's a lawsuit filed on the stripper. Okay. It wasn't just shyness or introversion. Certain sounds overwhelmed me, even if they weren't loud. They could even make me feel physically ill. Sudden changes threw me into a panic. The smallest shift in routine could derail me, leaving me unable to function for hours, sometimes days. I thrived on routine and could eat the same meals for weeks or even months at a time. Looking at you, Chipotle burritos. Over the years, I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, ADHD, and PTSD. Each one explained a piece of the puzzle, but never the whole picture. Then, after my life fell apart in ways I could never have imagined, I found out the truth. I have high-functioning autism. And by the way, I'm no expert, but I do believe ADHD and anxiety and a lot are linked to people who might be on the spectrum. How we all exist on this earth. And again, I'm not saying anyone's not neurodivergent. I think we're all different in our brain, and I'm not conflating autism with being neurodivergent. The more people look into it, the more complicated it is. How people present themselves across gender is different as far as being autistic or with ADHD. And a lot of times women aren't diagnosed with ADHD because it presents itself differently than in men or in boys. And the same probably, I'm sure, goes for autism. Now, what any of that has to do with the crimes that were committed, look, I would accept, not that anyone cares for what I have to say, but I would accept if she fessed up to all of this and said, I'm autistic, and here's the reason why I did what I did. But what we're about to see is her say, I'm autistic and I'm still innocent of all of the crimes she's not about to address. Those crimes of medical fraud and posing as different doctors and this and that. It's like, look, whether it's autism or some other, issue, people in the comment section have said cluster B disorder, bipolar. I have no idea. I'm not an expert. I think experts would have a field day with this. But regardless with whatever it is, for sure, she ain't normal, okay? No one does what she's done. We're all jaw dropped agape here. Just wondering what the hell went down. I was going to make a jaw drop agape joke, but I didn't. I have high functioning autism. Autism wasn't something I ever thought could describe me. I always assumed it meant struggling with emotions or missing social cues, things I never had trouble with. I understand humor. I connect deeply with people. I've always felt everything. But what I didn't realize was how much I was working behind the scenes just to keep up. By the way, she says she understands humor, but I made the funniest joke about the Malaysian flight that disappeared when she was, she ended up trying to, use it against me, but it was a funny joke. Trust me. I don't need any, it hit pretty hard. Autism for me wasn't about being disconnected. It was about how hard I was pushing myself to handle things others seemed to manage easily. Oh, I have a cute photo of her and her big sister. I wish I could tell the little girl on the left that the shyness and fear of change won't go away, but one day she will learn why. Getting diagnosed with autism will give her something more important than answers. I'll give her a reason to be kind to herself. I'll give Laura this. She has looked for so many ways she could play the victim in life. And by the way, I'm not saying autistic people are victims, you know what I mean? But what she's doing here is trying to write off all of the mistakes she's made with certain, shields she can hide behind. Then my life completely fell apart. After a year of celibacy, I found myself staring at a positive pregnancy test. Of course, she blew Clayton twice. It was 11 days after I hooked up with my then realtor, Clayton Echard, a realtor she sought out, former star of The Bachelor. Suddenly, the structure and predictability that had kept me grounded disappeared. I was consumed by uncertainty and fear, and I froze. I went to urgent care to get the pregnancy confirmed and informed Clayton about the positive test results. I even provided him access to my patient portal so he could verify it himself. In response, he texted me a list of options like it was a business transaction. I would like for you to get an abortion. If you do not, that's your choice. Either you'll take 100% custody of the child or it will be put up for adoption. Then later, one of us will have 100% custody. There will be no joint custody. He ended the conversation by saying that he would talk to me when the time came to take a prenatal paternity test, would come weeks later. A couple of weeks later, he texted me to invite me to his apartment to talk, saying, I feel God is telling me we should meet up. I thought we might finally be able to make a decision together about the pregnancy, something we could navigate as adults. I hope that maybe the pressure wouldn't be solely on me anymore, that together we could do what was best for all involved. But when I arrived, instead of conversation, he handed me a pregnancy test he had bought and asked me to take it in front of him. I did, and it came back positive. In his deposition, Clayton admitted to buying the test, but later tried to dismiss the results by saying, let's call it an HCG test because we know she was never pregnant. When asked directly if the box indicated it was a pregnancy test, he replied, sure, I guess that's what they market it as for people who are actually truthful and taking these tests and don't lie. He even doubled down in a recent interview with Reality Steve saying it's known as a pregnancy test for most people, but not her. Now, the reason he's saying this is because he never hooked up with her and she never took a follow-up exam, anything more substantial than an HCG test. And of course, the HCG levels didn't line up with her pregnancy timeline. That's why she did medical fraud. You guys know the whole story. But boy, is she leaving a lot out here. The day after seeing the test results with his own eyes, Clayton finally seemed to accept reality. He accepted being gaslighted. He texted me, I wanted you to come over to confirm what I was doubting, so I don't see you as a liar anymore. For a brief moment, I thought we were finally on the same page and maybe there was a way forward. He even said, I'm going to try and give us a chance this week. I'm keeping an open mind, and maybe this weekend we can meet back up and see if it's a possibility to be intimate. I'm really trying to have you feel seen and heard, so I want to give it a chance your way. At least at the end of it, I'll know I tried everything I could. And by the way, this is my belief, this is due to the abortion, like if we date, I'll get an abortion type of deal. Again, she's leaving a lot out here. Sure, yeah, let's go on a date, hoping she'll, take the plan B. For the first time, it felt like I might be getting the clarity I so desperately needed. But within hours, everything changed again. He told me he had prayed about it and received an answer that we were not meant to be together in any capacity. Then he added, God has spoken to me that it is your body and your choice. Therefore, I am not going to ask for you to get an abortion. However, that is my preference personally. Oh, but what a noble guy. He's like, look, I'm not going to ask you to do anything, but this is what I would do if I was in your shoes. Given his sudden change of heart, I thought maybe he was overwhelmed, uncertain, or just needed time to process everything. By the way, what does any of this have to do with her getting diagnosed with autism? In my mind, if he had been open to getting to know each other once, if he was willing to see if we could figure out how to be parents together, or at least co-parent peacefully, there was a chance he might reconsider. So over the next few months, I tried to reopen the conversation, hoping we could find common ground. Months later, Clayton leaked those private conversations to the public, and the newly formed Justice for Clayton group latched onto what they sensationalized as a dating contract. They distorted my genuine efforts to find a way forward, twisting it into a narrative that I was trying to extort him into a relationship. In reality, all I wanted was to explore every option, from trying to parent together to finding a way to co-parent respectfully, before we were left with only the hardest choices. Oh yeah, how sensational of them. I mean, it's not like she wanted his signature to lock it in. Listen, when you have a DocuSign, it's a contract. In an effort to get Clayton involved in the decision-making process, I invited him and his family to 5 different OBGYN appointments. I hope that hearing directly from a doctor might make the situation more real for him, might push him to finally engage with the pregnancy. Maybe, just maybe, he'd step up. But each time they showed no interest. I couldn't bring myself to face it alone. I canceled all the appointments, suffocated by the thought of sitting there by myself, overwhelmed by the uncertainty and the pressure. Maybe part of me wasn't ready to face it either. Where's the autism part? When it became clear that trying to work things out directly with Clayton wasn't going anywhere, I decided to take a more structured approach. I paid a lawyer $5,000 to step in as a middleman, hoping that with professional guidance we could come up with a clear parenting plan, something that would provide structure and remove the constant uncertainty. But even with legal help, we made no progress. The retainer ran out in a week, and I was right back where I started again. I decided that the next logical step was to file a paternity case. Oh my gosh, I can't get through all this. After filing, I paid for the paternity test at the lab Clayton chose, fully expecting him to schedule his portion, but he didn't. He ignored calls. No, he did. 3 out of 4 of the tests showed back little to no fetal DNA. That's just my fact check. I didn't want to go to the media to pressure Clayton to take accountability. Accountability for what? When you had the baby, that's when you would done, you know what I mean? No, nobody does these paternity, things in their first trimester. I didn't want to go to the media to pressure Clayton to take accountability, but it felt like my only option at that point. I wasn't seeking attention or fame, far from it. I even asked to remain anonymous. But I wasn't after Clayton's money. He was my realtor. And if he'd followed through with submitting the 2 offers he claimed to have made on my behalf, he would have earned his commission. But that's another story. I thought public pressure would compel him to take the DNA test and finally engage in a conversation about a custody plan. Where's my DNA test button? Sorry guys, I just wasn't ready for that. I just took a DNA test. The situation was spiraling out of control, and I needed answers from him. Why did you need answers from him? And by the way, she didn't want fame. She wanted a story, right? She was going to use this and then make a TEDx talk about it probably 2 years later. When the news hit the press, that's my opinion, Clayton denied that our one-night stand resulted in a pregnancy, 2 blowjobs, and millions believed him. Why wouldn't they? He was the Bachelor, the charming man who handed out roses on TV, someone they thought they knew and could trust. No one trusted Clayton. Meanwhile, I was painted as a manipulative, attention-seeking liar. They didn't know me. The irony, the Daily Beast once called Clayton the biggest F-boy in Bachelor history, yet no one seemed to question his version of events. This was the same man who, on the Vile Files, admitted that when I came over that night, we took our clothes off almost immediately and didn't put them back on until the next morning. He even talked openly about finishing twice that night. He's never denied that we hooked up, but he also said he finished in your mouth. She left that part out. For all the talking she's doing, she's leaving out a lot. He's never denied that we hooked up or that I came over to take a pregnancy test in front of him. He confirmed all of that. Yes, but he's denied banging you. He's denied bumping uglies, knocking boots, doing the horizontal tango. All of that denied by him. After I miscarried, I tried to drop the case. No one's believing this, right? No one's reading this. There was no reason to continue it. Clayton had no legal fees, but Clayton hired an attorney, Greg Woodnick, who allegedly took on the case pro bono as part of a personal vendetta against me. And by the way, I'm not saying Greg Woodnick had a vendetta against her. I'm saying she accused him of the R-word conspiracy in a previous trial with a guy that also claimed she made up the whole story. Oh, What a surprise to think some lawyers have an axe to grind with you. Judge Julianne Mata of the Maricopa County Superior Court agreed, and the case dragged on for 8 horrendous months. It dragged on. Oh my God, as if her attorney didn't file every motion in the book. It didn't drag on. It went its normal course. In the courtroom, Judge Julianne Mata sat there seemingly enchanted by Clayton's fame. It was like she couldn't see past the glitter of his role as the Bachelor. Her father sat in the overflow room with the Justice for Clayton supporters. He allegedly called the case a circus, a shit show. Both of those would be accurate portrayals of what the case was, while they laughed and fed off the spectacle. It was like being on trial for something I couldn't even define, being myself. Her sister followed Clayton on Instagram. How could I stand a chance? In her rule, no one followed me on Instagram. All right. In her ruling, Judge Mata wrote that no reasonable person would cancel appointments during a high-risk pregnancy. But what's reasonable when you're autistic? Okay, so she finally mentions autism again. But what's reasonable when you're autistic? When you're too afraid to face the situation on your own that you can't even walk into a doctor's office? She didn't see me struggling to survive. She saw someone who didn't fit the narrow mold of what a reasonable woman should look like. And that was enough for her to say I wasn't credible. And of course, here we have, previous articles when judges play doctor, and really gets into the idea of if you're going to prove, the burden of proof lies on the person to prove that they were pregnant, and the judge just didn't believe she did that. So sorry that Laura is finding an excuse as to why she couldn't go to the doctor. Sorry that she's, so unable to face the world, like that she couldn't go prove her case. All she had to do was prove her case. All she had to do was show up to a doctor, get an ultrasound. You literally, how easy it is for her to prove her case. And she's saying, well, I couldn't do that because autism. So if I were autistic, I don't know how I'd react, but I'd certainly say this. I'd be certainly offended that she's using autism as an excuse to never prove her own innocence. And by innocence, I mean that she was ever pregnant. She claimed, and it's like, what else could this be applied to? She could make crazy claims, never prove them because autism. She claimed that the petition was not filed in good faith. The petition was not grounded in fact or based on law. The petition was filed for an improper purpose, such as to harass the other party, to cause an unnecessary delay, or to increase the cost of litigation to the other party. To increase the cost of litigation? Really? I tried to drop the case after I miscarried, when Clayton had no legal fees and she refused to let me. She even went as far as to say that I knowingly presented a false claim despite having not only the positive ACG test, but the opinion of an OBGYN expert witness who testified with 99.9% certainty that I was pregnant. Well, that OBGYN never did an ultrasound on your belly, okay? That's an opinion from somebody you paid an opinion for. Now, you're not paying me for my opinion, but my opinion is you're a gosh dang fraud. As if that wasn't enough, she wrote that there was what happens to be a case of serial fabrications here and elsewhere by petitioner. What serial fabrications? Mike Maricini, Greg Gillespie, and even the guy named Matt who wants to remain anonymous. The case against Echard was the only paternity case I've ever filed in my life. All right, false comparison. Just because you didn't file a paternity case in these other examples doesn't mean they have credible evidence that you faked ovarian cancer, faked an abortion, faked an Asian doctor, faked a Jewish agent, faked a black journalist. I mean, she's literally the fucking YMCA of things, of village people that she's faked. As if that wasn't enough, she wrote that there was what appears to be a case of serial fabrications. How could she claim I had a history of this when there was absolutely no basis for it? I just shared the basis. Judge Mata ignored the science, ignored the medical records, ignored the HCG positive blood and urine tests, all proving I was pregnant. What she didn't ignore was the evidence that she faked the HCG test sent to me, that it had a measly 102. Someone could have sneezed HCG on her and she would have tested positive for a 102, right? She should have been at like 134,000. How I fidgeted, how my voice trembled, how I fell apart under the weight of it all. She fell apart because she got her dates wrong on the day she was supposedly going to Planned Parenthood Mission Viejo and lied under oath. She lied under oath. Because she's autistic, I guess. And for that, she referred me to the county attorney and awarded a $149,000 judgment to Clayton for his legal fees, which had allegedly accrued over the 8 months after I tried to dismiss the case. My attorney and I are appealing this ruling, but if it isn't overturned, have I unknowingly opened a door to something far more dangerous? Oh, she's starting to get worried it won't be overturned, where a woman's right to file a paternity case can be used against her. 30% of women who file these cases are wrong about who the father is. But how many of them are wrong about being pregnant? It ain't about who the dad is. It's about there is no dad. If my case stands, it means that any woman, even with proof, could face financial devastation just for filing. And let's not claim that Laura is facing financial devastation. She is the product of privilege from wealthy parents who can light up a room. It means a man could ruin her, both financially and legally. It means the simple act of seeking the truth could become too dangerous to risk. Make no bones about it. Clayton Echard was the person here who did not have control. She had all the control in the world. She had the story down. She could smear him. She wanted to remain anonymous. She had all the money to fight this. He was the victim here. And all of this because a judge, dazzled by Clayton's fame, couldn't understand my autism. She couldn't see that my actions, shaped by a developmental disorder, weren't about deception. They were about fear, about navigating uncertainty the only way I knew how, by withdrawing, by not going to appointments, by being mentally paralyzed. But the science that proved I was pregnant didn't matter. The only thing that did was how I behaved. Okay, interesting. So she realizes she can't win this based on facts, because she could never prove she was pregnant other than some meaningless HCG test, right? She never proved ultrasound. She only lied about it. She never proved paternity. There was no fetal DNA, little to no fetal DNA. So she's now going for a qualitative measure, which is she didn't behave the right way. Look, if there was like one date she didn't show up to because she had a panic attack, that's one thing. She for months on end, knew the consequences of her actions. She doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on her lies. So justice for Clayton cult members and the grifty content creators who have created thousands of hours of content about my life, who turned a simple paternity case into a cruel, merciless witch hunt for the last year. I leave you with this. You've given the 3 men I have active restraining orders against, granted by 3 judges in 2 states, a platform to rewrite history. Thanks to you and Judge Mata, they've gone from abusers to victims in your eyes, even though the court hasn't modified a single one of their orders. You even cheered as Maricini gave a 2.5-hour interview to one of the Justice for Clayton content creators, claiming it was his first time telling his story. First time? He's told it to a judge twice, and the case file is over 200 pages long. You turned my suffering into your entertainment. You made a spectacle of my suffering, turned it into memes, followed my every move like I was something to be hunted. You didn't just stop at me, you dragged my family into it, even contacting my sister's workplace multiple times to tell them about Justice for Clayton. You followed my 78-year-old father's ex-girlfriend on social media. You made death threats against my mother, writing on Facebook, everyone shoot that C word, and posted that you believed to be her home address, which it wasn't. You even called Adult Productive Services, falsely accusing me of abusing my own father. We still don't know that. You sent prank welfare checks, not out of concern. Well, by the way, the welfare check that I know of was sent by the FBI. Okay, the FBI sent it because she did threaten to, kill herself. But just so you could later obtain the body cam footage and harass me with it on Reddit and YouTube, so content creators could make videos and profit off my misery. You paid to manipulate search results so that when people looked at my name, they'd be sent to Justice for Clayton. You stalked my clients, warned my gym about me, my competitors, people who had nothing to do with any of this. You have called me a waste of skin and bones. You didn't stop to think about the human cost of what you were doing. You understood that if a lie is repeated enough times, it starts to sound like the truth. That's how you buried the facts, by constantly pushing the same false narrative until people believed it. Listen, I don't speak for anybody else. I speak for myself. And I believe I covered this story as ethically as I possibly could. I don't speak for anyone else. I've just looked for the truth here. And Echard has encouraged you to ignoring the protection order I had against him, which clearly stated defendant shall not communicate or post untrue or harassing comments regarding plaintiff online and shall not cause others to communicate or post untrue or harassing comments. Listen, Clayton has not violated his protective order, period. You cheered as he appeared on the Charlie Kirk show, where both he and Kirk stated that I needed to be prosecuted. Isn't he allowed to have that opinion? On a different show, he openly admitted the community of people that keeps uncovering and supporting me is tracking her every move, giving me the green light to dig deeper, to tear apart every piece of my life. In yet another interview, he brazenly said about the protection order I have against him, I got to the point where I was like, you know what? Actually, I'm going to test this. I dare. If the police show up and try to put me in cuffs for her, this is going to be a bigger stink than you realize. I'm going to fight this tooth and nail and say this is based on lies. Then he added, so I kind of got to the point where I'm like, no, wait, this is all based in a lie. So this protective order to me doesn't even exist. I don't really consider it valid whatsoever. I'm 5'5" and weigh 85 pounds now. That's 48 pounds gone since I learned I miscarried last November. I barely recognize myself anymore. My skin is pale. My eyes are sunken. And I look like I've aged 2 decades in a single year. Something you've cruelly pointed out on social media. And as much as it hurts to admit it, you're right. I see it too. I see a woman whose body has been ravaged by relentless stress and fear. A woman stripped down to almost nothing. I see someone who has been pushed to her breaking point because of you. Because of the parasocial obsession this case has fueled. Because of the cult-like behavior that has surrounded it. I'm not here to ask for your approval, and I don't need your sympathy. But if there's one thing I hope you take away from this, it's that you never knew me. My reactions, freezing, withdrawing, hesitating, weren't signs of deception or manipulation. They were shaped by a developmental disorder I didn't even know I had. I wasn't trying to get something in return for having an abortion. I wasn't trying to extort anyone. All I wanted was clarity, a plan, some kind of path forward, where everyone involved could feel at peace. But instead of trying to understand that, you judged me, tore apart my every move, and decided you had me all figured out. You saw hesitation and labeled it manipulation. You saw fear and called it dishonesty. But you never once considered that maybe I was just doing the best I could in a mind that was overwhelmed by the weight of decisions that felt impossible. I wasn't playing games. I was surviving. I wasn't calculating. I was struggling. I'm coming to terms with what being on the spectrum means, and it's scary for me. But I've faced harder things before, like the last year. I've got this. And here's the truth. I'd rather be me, with all my struggles, my flaws, and my autism, than be any one of you. I'd rather carry the weight of this diagnosis of being misunderstood than live with the kind of cruelty you've shown. So I leave you with this. I hope you find out why you took pleasure in tearing down a stranger. I hope you figure out why you spent thousands of hours analyzing my behavior, making videos, and profiting off my pain. And I hope that when you meet someone who doesn't act the way you expect, you stop and ask yourself, maybe there's more going on here than I know. Because the next person might not survive what you put them through. I almost didn't. So what she conveniently leaves out here is all of the effort she took to sink my ship, sink Clayton's ship, sink Greg Gillespie's ship, sink Mike Maricini's ship, send cease and desist to Mike from the lawyer. She wanted to tell a story that didn't line up with objective facts. And all we did was focus on the truth. So I'm not going to take her framing whatsoever. I'm going to focus on telling Clayton's story and everyone else's story. And if it just so happens that she has to deal with the consequences of her actions, which are a ton of different types of fraud, perjury, being investigated by Maricopa County prosecutors, that's on her to cope with. I've said this all along. I don't necessarily want to see her in prison. I want to see her admit to doing this and seek treatment to get better. Now that she knows she's quote unquote autistic, maybe that'll help her get into the right sort of facility to understand why she lied about all of this. But instead, she's using her autism to play the victim here. We have a friend of the community who is autistic, and we're going to call her right now and get her thoughts on the matter because I know she's going to have a lot to say here. So let's speak to somebody who might be able to relate in one way or another. Kate, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It took me a little longer to read that blog post. Did you read it?
Well, I read it about an hour ago, and then I was just listening to your video right now, and it just made me angry all over again.
All right. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and give me your thoughts on all of this?
Sure. Yeah. So we are an autistic family. So my younger son, he's 6. He was diagnosed about 3 years ago, I guess. And then since then, it's been one of those like finding expeditions where like my older son is also autistic, and I am, and my husband is, and even like my husband's 9-year-old grandmother has like found out she's also autistic. So it's genetic, right? So it's like I said, we're a family of autistic people. Yeah, and so I've been like part of the JFC community since the very beginning. It was actually like it's a year tomorrow that she released or went to the sun. So I've been invested, and the special needs comment that like the Gingrich released several months ago, that first got to me, and then now with this thing that was released last night, I was highly offended because none of her actions line up with being autistic.
Well, we know this about her, right? We know she'll use any shield she can. You know, she created a black journalist to try to cancel Clayton. She's, talked about, her father claimed anti-Semitism, right? So she's going to try to use anything she can. If she is autistic, it doesn't really make a difference, right? I mean, like, let's just, so you don't think she is, but let's just play the devil's advocate and say, okay, so you are autistic. Does this give her carte blanche to, no, but she also doesn't admit to anything with her autism. She just basically says, I never got medical treatment because of my autism, right?
Right, exactly. Somebody stated in your Patreon earlier today, and I just wanted to read what they said. They said, for a diagnosis to be used to explain behavior, you have to admit the behavior was wrong. Like, you can't have it both ways. Excuse me. I just thought that was interesting. Like, you can't say you didn't do anything wrong, but then also say, well, I'm autistic, and so that's why what I was doing was wrong. Yeah,
and it's also, I mean, so tell me why you don't think she's autistic.
Well, of course, I'm not a medical professional. I'm just a autistic person, as well as a mom of autistic boys. Just nothing that she portrays, I don't know her personally, but nothing that I've seen online or in writings portrays that. Like, I know this is kind of a overarching theme, but autistic people are known for being brutally honest. A lot of us actually cannot lie because it's black and white. So that right there tells me that, like, all we ever see her do is lie. And so that is just also, like, that doesn't make sense to me. Oh, so
almost like her ability to deceive would be something that would not be common for an autistic person because they would be very truthful.
Correct. Yes. Correct.
Oh, that's very interesting. Now, can I ask you, when did you find out you were autistic? Was this a later in life thing? I mean, a lot of people, these terms weren't readily available to them, and they might, same thing with like ADHD, they might not have known. Like, is this something that you've known for a long time and worked through?
No, it's only been since my younger son was diagnosed 3 years ago. We've kind of had this whole, like, awakening now that our whole family is neurodivergent. My sister is ADHD, and, like, we just have neurodiversity that runs all through our family that we didn't know about.
I think it's such a beautiful thing for you guys for you to find that out, because a lot of people I do think struggle their whole life thinking they're different in their blueprint to how their brain works. A lot, like, there's always a lot of frustration, that comes. I know just from I'm not diagnosed with anything, but whatever's going on in my brain, if you're in the Patreon, there'll be days where I'm just super frustrated because one little, like, wrench is thrown into the system and it throws off my whole schedule. And it's like, everyone's different, and it goes on a spectrum. When she says she's highly functioning, does that mean it's like she's claiming she's lightly autistic?
I know. Those terms are very outdated. So when she said that, I don't know.
I'm sorry, just to interject, but that's the point, right? Is that she kind of like chat GPTs these things where she's using an outdated term. Clearly, if she just found out she's autistic, she would have gone to a professional and they wouldn't have used such a simple way to describe her, right?
Well, maybe. It depends on the professional she saw. Of course, we know her track record with who she sees. It could have been a, mom doc thing that she went to online or something. But yeah, so I think maybe some doctors still use it, but in the neurodivergent community as a whole, it's outdated, because that's, like, usually high functioning autistic people. It just means that we're masking, our differences, that we've done a really good job at hiding, like, what's going on in our brains.
Right, coping. So, like, doing a good job of just adjusting to the world, even though it's not something that might come natural to you.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, and, like, look, there's no doubt, it's like not rocket science that something's wrong with her. I'm not trying to like describe what that is, but I know a lot of, look, I mean, as a comedian, I know legit crazy people that do stand up. I meet the craziest of people, and I don't know anybody who's ever done anything like this. So there's something pathological about her, but to use something so trendy as autism, I just find that so offensive.
I totally agree. And her whole blog that she just wrote, the first 2 paragraphs, she's explaining what it's like to live as an autistic person, which I can relate, the social anxiety, things like that. I totally relate to. But then she shifts and she just writes all the same stuff that she's written for months about Judge Mata and Clayton and whatever. And like you had said, what in the world does that have to do with autism? It doesn't have anything to do, one does not lead to the other.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like those first 2 paragraphs would have been great if they were followed by a complete confession where she says,
sure.
I was so lonely. I blew this guy who was the Bachelor and I felt like I wanted attention from it. I love because she clearly gets the attention from the victim narrative, whether it be a TEDx talk or writing blogs. And I don't blame her. We've all been in scenarios where I remember in high school, I injured my shoulder. People treated me like the mayor of the town because I was I played football and I was injured, and that, people were it's it feels good to be treated that way, but you can't fabricate those scenarios and use in the collateral damage to these men. You just can't do it. And so it's she'll take a quarter truth, which is she is lonely. She's obviously obsessed with the internet. Everything she does, from going to school online to all of the ways she's meeting these men, everything's done. Like I've said, if I was a judge, I would prosecute her and make her go work in Trader Joe's for 5 years. I bet she would come out a jolly person with a nice little Trader Joe's Hawaiian shirt. She would know all the local, seasonal foods. But it's get out and live in this earth. It's like she keeps on going to the internet to solve her problems, and it seems like it's. I mean, she's got to be just as lonely now as she was, a year ago. But yeah. So what other what specifically do you think triggered you from hearing this blog of hers?
I think just knowing that she's trying to use this as an excuse to explain her behaviors. I'm autistic. I have 2 babies. I went to every single doctor's appointment. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Being autistic does not have anything to do with being responsible and doing what you're supposed to do. So, and not. Sorry. So because you were diagnosed recently, you probably have a similar experience to her if she did get diagnosed. Did you go to the doctors in person? Are these in-person extensive exams? I don't have an official diagnosis from a doctor. It's just kind of the self finding out that you do have these similar traits as your son who's officially diagnosed. But I know you do, to get a diagnosis, you go to a psychiatrist, to a psychologist, to a neurologist, which I thought was really interesting that she claims to go to a neurologist for her epilepsy, but they didn't diagnose her before. I thought that part was interesting. Well, neurologists can't diagnose.
That's what's interesting, right? Is she claims to be in the Barrow Institute. She claims to be, and if it's did she go to a doctor to get diagnosed? Because her whole argument is she was paralyzed, so couldn't go to the doctor to get an ultrasound check. Which, by the way, gynecologists, they're generally nice people. It's a happy environment. Everyone's checking on their babies.
Exactly.
I didn't miss one of my wife's ultrasound appointments. I genuinely loved going with her. We'd wave to people. Oh, how are you? So 13 weeks. Oh, no way. I just love that.
That's awesome.
And
she was still going to horse shows and everything like that during that time. So it wasn't the social anxiety that, kept her from going to these appointments.
Kate, how dare you bring up she went to horse shows? She's clearly only paralyzed. She has selective paralysis is what she has. Well, listen, you brought up some great points, and I appreciate you calling in, or me calling you and letting me talk to you. If there's anything, and I appreciate you being in the community, but if there's any other ways you can help me discuss autism and how it affects the family, it sounds like your kids, are they 2 boys?
2 boys. Uh-huh.
2 boys. Oh, you got a family of this testosterone. God bless you.
Oh, for sure.
It sounds like they're lucky to have a mom who, understands how their brains work and the blueprints that exist in your family. So congratulations on that. And, you're welcome. She wants to write us all off as these psychos. Now, look, there's a lot of people that are following this story, and some people are going to cross the line and bully and this and that. But I'm encouraged by the stories of folks like you who are, just curious to see how this all plays out. And I think there's more people like you here, nice people that are watching this than there are the toxic folks. But she'll never, she can't see it that way. But yeah, so it sounds to me like she's setting up this whole framework so that when she is convicted and when her appeal is denied, she'll at least have that to fall back on. That this was a medicine denying judge and denying my illness, and maybe she's going to try to play some sort of angle where she's the persecuted one. I just think no one's going to buy it.
Oh, I totally agree. Do you mind, before we go, I wanted to read a statement from another autistic or autism mom in the community.
Yes, please.
So this, I don't know, people that have been around since the beginning on Reddit, there was an account named Older Greg, and she is also an autism mom, and she just asked that I read this statement from her. She said, as a mother of an autistic child, it's heartbreaking to see Laura falsely use autism as a shield for bad behavior. My child, like so many others, works hard every day to navigate a world that often misunderstands and judges them. The world judges Laura for her lies, her actions, and her abuse. She needs to take accountability. When people like Laura falsely claim autism to excuse harmful stereotypes, making it even harder for those genuinely on the spectrum to be seen for who they are, not defined by their diagnosis, but by their unique strengths and challenges. Autism isn't an excuse for bad behavior, and pretending it is only deepens the stigma that we fight so hard against. Laura is known for co-opting minority groups, and this is no different. Her behavior is unlike anything I've seen in the dozens of autistic children and adults that I've interacted with. If anything, it's contradictory to their very nature. While you can't paint with a broad brush, generally autistics are known for their honesty, and Laura is anything but that.
Wow.
And I just wanted to read that from her.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that really hits me thinking of a world where, autistic children feel judged and feel out of place. If anything, I do think that the world is moving in the direction of being way more inclusive, but as an adult here that we come from, childhood can be pretty cruel to a normal divergent person. So wishing you and your family don't have to deal with any of that. And thanks again for sharing your story and her story. And we'll continue to cover this, but reach out to me anytime you have anything you want to share.
Awesome. Will do. Thank you so much, Dave.
All right.
Thanks for being a voice for this.
Of course. Tell your family old Dave said hi, and have a good rest of your day.
Will do. You too. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Kate. There it was. Kate, pseudonym Kate, not real name, pseudonym Kate. We use Kate as a pseudonym because we have a mutual love for the show Lost, and I just was getting the aura that she was a Kate type. We love a good 4-letter Kate. All right. Well, there it is. It's a long video, but it's interesting. So just reminds me, whatever energy is thrown at us, that's an energy of hate, vitriol, defensiveness, whatever this Laura Owens wants to throw at us, we are just going to surround ourselves by love. And this community is full of so much love for the truth and for each other. And that is a bond that will not be stripped. I'm sorry. It is a bond that has helped me continue to cover this story. So while she might say, oh, you covered it for thousands of hours, I got thousands of hours of love and people that have come together in support of that truth. It is the reason why when I've met a lot of these victims, their wives and girlfriends have hugged me. Clayton's father hugged me. In that mutual exchange, that physicality after so much loneliness and fear is such a burden undone. So for everyone that's out there that's followed this story and shared love and shared hope and shared community, I thank you. And don't forget, keep on sending friendly tweets to the prosecutor in Maricopa County to make sure this investigation continues. I think, believe it or not, years from now, Laura Owens may even thank us for trying to get her the help that she still so desperately is avoiding. All right, folks, that's it for me. If you enjoy what I do, I got my podcast this afternoon. Got to go get to it right now, The Rush Hour with Dave Neal. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.